Good evening, everyone. We are coming to the end of the book of Ruth. We are starting today in chapter 4. We left off chapter 3 yesterday with that very interesting event where Naomi told Ruth to go and meet with Boaz at the threshing floor. And in that conversation that ensued, there was an exchange where Boaz was invited to become the redeemer kin, or the close relative that can help them redeem the land. Now, after that, at the end of chapter 3, Naomi advised Ruth to sit tight, watch, and see what happens. And so Boaz is the one who is going to be in focus in chapter 4. So with chapter 4, we now read, now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. One of the things that we may not be aware, but I've had a chance to tell you more about it when we were studying the prophet books, is the importance of the gate. The gate is a place where the leaders would sit and congregate. The gate is a place where much of commercial activities will take place. It is the entrance and exit to the city itself. And so it becomes a very important focal point in any city by far. And Boaz, when he goes up to the gate and he sits down there, tells us that Boaz is definitely one of the key leaders of the city. This would be very similar when, if you read the book of Genesis, say in chapter 19, and you would find the narrative of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the angels went into the city and they found Lot at the gate. And so whenever you read of someone at the gate, it is not that they've got nothing better to do standing there looking at people walking by, but gates are places where leaders congregate and they would judge situations. They don't have a common town hall like many other cultures. And so their town hall is actually the gate. And so the gate is very, very important to the people of the ancient past. And so he sat down there and then suddenly he saw. Behold means look. The close relative of whom Boaz had spoken came by. Now, this, how should we say? The word here is not relative, unfortunately, right? The word here is not close relative. The word here is how we have read that in chapter 3. And this gives us the idea of the Goel, right? He is the Goel from the word Gaal. And the reason why I wanted to point out to you is this, that though the English translation gives us the word close relative, you need to be aware that it actually refers to a very, very close relative, and that's not an issue. But the word here, drawing from the word Gaal, tells us that it is with the purpose of redeeming the land. So he is very much a very close kin of the family who is in a position to redeem, to be the redeemer of the property. That is what the word close relative actually means. Now, if you recall in chapter 3, Boaz actually was telling Ruth that he is not the one that is closest. And if you look at, say, this would be in chapter 3, and you should read in uh, verse 12, okay? And that is how Boaz had indicated that there is someone who is closer, right? Closer. And that is the person that Boaz had met. Now, I guess one of the things that we need to understand is, what do you mean by closer? Closer means somebody who is more worthy, somebody who is, well, in Oriental terms, who is more elder, or the elder relative of Boaz, right? That would be the definition of closer. If you recall, in Oriental thinking, when you have cousins, the cousins will be ranked by age, not by the parent, right? Not by the parent. They because they are all belonging to the same generation. And so in that generation of Boaz, there is one other cousin or close relative who is more worthy to become the redeemer than he. That is what this phrase actually means. So Boaz says, come aside. Come aside means you stop going where you're going. And he calls him, sit down here. Now, I guess you would say that there is no, I wouldn't call this friend, right? So let me just strike that out for now. So come aside and sit down here. And this word friend, let me just point out to you. The word friend comes from a word that is Poloni. Two words actually. Poloni, Almoni. So I wouldn't even use the word friend here. But I'm just trying to point out to you, in the Hebrew terms, there is a meaning, and it doesn't mean friend. A better English word would be so and so. What does that mean? It means that the scripture has found it that it was not justifiable to put his name down. And so the word Poloni Almoni literally means a certain person, right? A certain someone, right? And if you give it to the person as a name, it comes across as, no, that so and so, no. And in our local contemporary terms, we would say apanama, right? That so and so. And it's, in a way, it's derogatory because Boaz has a name. And when he was speaking to this person, the name of this person is actually not recorded in scripture. And so this is really not in the way that the English translation would have it as friend, but more as a certain someone, right? It's not a stranger, it's a close relative. And so I guess in the context that we are reading here, if you were to give him a name, his name is Mr. So-and-so. And he came aside and sat down with Boaz at the gate. And then he, understand this is Boaz. He took 10 men of the elders of the city. And I guess we need to understand that in the ancient days, whenever we call somebody an elder, he is somebody who is older and is somebody who is given authority. That is how the society of ancient Israel operated. And I guess we come to understand in our English language that, you know, you grow older and wiser is a contemporary adage that we give to somebody who has grown up amongst us and has demonstrated over the years that he is capable of taking leadership and hence called an elder of the city, not just because he's older, but because he's shown that he has a capability and respected for authority. And so the Oriental idea of according respect to elderly people is demonstrated by making them as the elder statesman or the leader within their midst who are older. And so in an Oriental family context, you would recognize that they become the patriarch of the family. And then the family will gravitate around these people. Now, there were 10 of them in the city. And he says, come, sit down here. And so they sat down. Where are they? At the gate. Notice the gate is, like I said, is a very important location to decide important things. Verse 3. Verse 3 says, then he said to the close relative. Now, again, let me point out to you the word close relative would be a redeemer kin. A very, very close relative that who can do the job of a redeemer. Now, this one says, then he said to the close relative, and had this conversation. Now, let me use a different color. He says, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab. This would be the open fields of Moab. Now, this gives us a glimpse of the history before Naomi and Elimelech left Israel. She sold the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. Now, understand this. Whenever they say brother, and they are all close kin, and which means that the elders of the city are also well known, knowing the family of Boaz and Naomi and Elimelech, of course. And now we are given a piece of information that Naomi actually sold the land. The word sell here is literally to sell, to exchange for money. That's the word sell. And it is a piece of land. And so remember when I said about the redeemer kin, it's always about the property. And this is what it means. This is the property which belonged to Elimelech. And I is Boaz, thought to inform you. The word here in verse 4, inform you literally means uncover your ears. It's a very interesting word. The Hebrew language is very, very interesting. It's filled with imagery. And so Boaz says, I want to uncover your ears so that you hear what is being said. What is said is this. I want to inform, I let you know, to buy the land back in the presence of the inhabitants and the elders of my people. And by that, he is actually talking to the close relative or the redeemer kin, the one whom Boaz says that he is more worthy. He is closer still. And in that terminology, he would be the nearer kin, meaning the older of the cousins, right? And the question would be this: if you will redeem it, then you go ahead and redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next after you. No. And of course, Boaz says, I will redeem it. So let's unpack this a little bit. It's a very interesting conversation. And in that conversation, he's giving this older relative a chance to say, if, that's a condition. This is not merely rhetorical, it's a condition. If you will buy the word here, if you redeem, so go ahead and redeem it. So basically he says, if you are going to do it, just redeem it. That's all it says. Just redeem it. The land will be yours. It's about the land, right? But if you will not, and so the alternative condition, if he chooses not to redeem, then tell me. Now the word here literally means declare. Declare to me. It means that you don't keep it to yourself. Don't ignore this situation, or don't whisper to me. Declare it in front of everyone. And when you declare it to me, and then, this is, and then, well, the word, I guess you can say may know, or I will know. How does he know? He would have observed it and, of course, heard him say. So knowledge here actually comes from an experience, right? It comes from an experience of this other closer kinsman redeemer. And then Boaz says, do you know that there is no one but you? No one but you. Essentially, the idea here is he is the only one at that point in time. There's no contention. There's no two other siblings, right? So he is the only one to redeem it. So remember, what is redeem? Redeem is ga'al. Ga'al is to buy back the land. And then he says, well, if that's the case, you are the only one, but if you don't, I, Boaz, is, well, I guess it doesn't say next, but next after is the translator's choice. I am behind you. Behind you means what? Well, if this was the beginning of the queue, the kinsman redeemer that he was talking to is the first, and Boaz is the second. That is how it is understood. It's behind you, right? And so the idea here is we have seen that he's closer because he's older. And in Oriental terms, you know that, no? The older one always have the preference in the same generation. And then Boaz says, well, if you don't do it, I will, right? I will. And now let us take a look at verse 5. Verse 5 is also very interesting. After saying all this, right? And then Boaz says, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi. What does that mean? It means that he is redeeming the land. That's what it means. Buy back the field. That's redeeming the land. Now, what is so interesting about redeeming the land is this. Naomi must have sold the land to someone else. And you need to understand that, that in Leviticus chapter 25, right? Leviticus chapter 25. This is based on Leviticus chapter 25, verse 25. So you need to go back and read this. That whole passage there, not just one verse, tells us this, that the land that belongs to the tribe cannot go away from the tribe. And so if it is sold because of poverty, because it was poor, because there was a need for money, of which Naomi must have, because Elimelech was leaving the place. So they sold the land. They must have sold the land to somebody else other than their next of kin, right? Other than their next of kin. And so now coming back, in order to salvage the land back, she is entitled to buy the land. Now, one of the most important things about land is land titles doesn't change tribes. This is something that we need to be very familiar. When God gave the 12 parcels of land to the 12 groups of the tribes of Israel, the principle is those people who own the land of those parcels must always hold on to the land, which will be inherited or bequeathed as a heritage to the sons and not the daughters. And as the sons get married, they can marry any tribe, but the property remains with the son. However, if there are no sons, then there is nobody else to inherit the land. And so the land will fall into another family's hands. And it has to be within the same tribe. Now, in this case of redeeming the land in chapter 25, verse 25 of the book of Leviticus, it is to help the poor person who sold the land to get the land back for the family. And that's the interest of this Redeemer kinsman concept here. To buy the land from the one that Naomi sold to, so that it belongs to Naomi again, and then to inherit the land from Naomi. That is the whole process of redemption. And as Naomi has Ruth for the daughter, although we call him her daughter-in-law, for in all intents and purposes in the communal life of Ruth joining Israel, she is a daughter of Naomi, and she's also the widow of Machlon, the eldest son who died in Moab. And so from Naomi will pass to Ruth as well. And so Boaz says, you must also buy it from Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of the dead. And who is the dead? Machlon. And moreover, it is not just that. The purpose of buying it from Ruth has a very clear objective: to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance. And so let's break this down. Perpetuate means to cause to stand. Cause to stand. And understand this, after a person dies, Machlon is forgotten. And since he's got no children, there will be nothing to remember him by. And basically marrying Ruth or buying it from Ruth, the Moabitess, is actually to marry Ruth and have a child to raise the fame or the name of the dead, which is Mahlon, through his inheritance. Now, this inheritance have two meanings. It's very interesting. The first inheritance is something passed down. Right? We know this all too well. And that would be the land. Right? That would be the land, the estate. The second part is found in, I guess, in Psalms 127. Psalms 127 verse 3. And Psalm 127 verse 3 says this, in the English language, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. And when we were doing Psalms 127 verse 3, the word children literally means sons, right? And now let's look at this verse again. The whole purpose of understanding the verse by breaking it down into pieces is that the redeeming, being a redeemer kinsman, is buying the field from the hand of Naomi, buying the field from Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, the widow of the dead, to raise his name through his inheritance. Now, two things I have noted here, right? One is from the property, that it will remain in the family's name, Mahlon's name, and two, sons born to Ruth, right? At least the firstborn to the name of Mahlon, so that it will it has an idea of a heritage, that there are children from the son, right? So based on that understanding, then you find that this is going to be a very tricky thing, right? In the sense that Boaz or whoever is going to do this has his own property and may have his own plans, and looking at what's on the table, that is 1 and 2, with the intent of 3. And so that would be the condition of the kinsman redeemer. Now let's look at verse 6. And the close relative, again, this is a redeemer, kin. He says, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I ruin my own inheritance. You redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now, understand what he's saying. First of all, he says, I cannot do it. I cannot do it for me, right? For me. Lest, the word lest here means there is a fear, right? There is a sense of fear of something is going to break. And so he says, for fear that I will ruin, I will, well, I guess the word is spoil, right? I will spoil, I will corrupt my own inheritance. Now, how can you corrupt your own inheritance? Remember, this is about sons. Now, one of the things that we have seen is that we can only surmise, I would say, we can only surmise this statement here may be with reference to Deuteronomy chapter 23 and in verse 4, that there cannot be an Ammonite or a Moabite join the congregation, or be part of his family. He just can't have it because he feels that it is against the law and it would corrupt it or spoil his lineage, right? You can say that, right? His lineage. However, it has been argued that this is about the men. It says nothing of women. And we have seen that Ruth is a Moabitess, a woman that doesn't fit into this bill of what he's fearing. But he has been very, very clear. He says that you, Boaz, you are next in line. You go ahead. You can go and redeem and take my option for yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now, we've been playing around with this word redeem, and the idea here is it's not that the close relative redeemer, kin, the one older than Boaz, doesn't want the land. He doesn't want to have children for Mahlon, to be associated with Mahlon, number one. Number two, he doesn't want to have Ruth the Moabitess as part of that lineage. In his mind, it kind of spoiled the thing, so to speak, right? So to speak. Now, let us look at verse 7. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. One man will take off his sandal and give it to the other. And this was a confirmation in Israel. Now, this is what we call a parenthesis. This is not part of the narrative. This is now a commentary to explain what is happening here. So you say, in former times in Israel, it says, to the faces of Israel. And understand, in the idea of time and direction, what you can see is the past, right? This is the past. And that is why it's translated former times. What you cannot see, which is at the back, would be the future. And so this seems to be the custom. This is what they are practicing in the old days, right? In the old days, concerning redeeming and exchanging. Redeeming means buying back, and exchanging. Exchanging means recompense or paying for it, right? So this word here is an A and a B. The word redeeming is the act of buying back. The thinking of recompense is paying to have it back. That's same concept, right? Same concept. And then it says to confirm anything. To confirm anything means it is to establish, to affirm. Well, in the old days, it is very much what is there to symbolize a transaction. In English law, for example, in English law, this is called a consideration. That if you were to buy anything, you have to say, pay money or sign a contract to describe exactly what you will do. And so in the old days in Israel, what did they do is that one man, and this is a bit ambiguous. Now, is this man the one who is redeeming or the one who is selling? We're not quite sure. But he is going to take off his sandal. And in this case, one sandal, because it's in the singular. We call it a shoe. I guess you can call it a slipper tongue. You can call it a slipper, right? You take off your slipper and then you will give it to the other. The other is actually, how would you call it? The brother, right? The brother or the close associate whom you are trying to redeem from. And this was a confirmation in Israel. The word confirmation is an attestation. Attestation, a witness. That's really what it means, right? That's really what it means. And so when one person takes off his slipper and gives it to the other, they would have agreed who is going to redeem. And so we read here in verse 8, therefore the close relative, and this close relative means the Goel, the one who is closer than Boaz to redeem, says this, buy it for yourself. Right? Buy it for yourself. And so he took off his sandal and he gave it to Boaz. Right? So now I would think, this is my view of it, right? This would be the relative. And he gave it, right? Gave to Boaz. Now, some people would think that it is actually Boaz that gave it to the relative. And that's also possible because now Boaz is the one that is going to redeem it and not the close relative. So this could also be perhaps Boaz to signify that he is going to take over the exchange. And so Boaz said to the elders and all the people, now you've got witnesses, people standing around, you are all witnesses this day. The meaning of witness is somebody who will be able to stand to testify. So it is not merely people who have seen it, but people who are recording it in memory, and when need be in the future, be called on to say, yes, I was there at the gate, and this other chap says that he is allowing Boaz to redeem. And so that is the purpose of witnesses, that I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Chilion and Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi. So now he is declaring, right? That he is buying, he is acquiring, I think would be a better word. Acquiring all that is in the hand of Naomi. Now, the second part is important. Remember, there are two parts. The same Ruth, the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife. Now, you may be wondering, what in the world is he talking about buying Ruth? Okay. Now, this whole idea of kana really is the idea of acquiring and it is to take, to own, right? Take, to own. And you need to understand in the old days, and I think even in ancient China, and the concept is very interesting as a husband and wife, that the husband actually owns the wife. That's the principle. The head of the family is a husband because the husband owns the wife. The husband is the Baal, the Lord. Not in the sense of a tyrant, but in the sense of a relationship that the owner or the master is obliged to protect, to provide, and to take care of the woman. Well, modern day it's called wife, but in those days it's called woman. And so he has said, I am going to do that. And he also expressly says to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brethren and from his position at the gate. And then he says, you are witnesses this day. There's a lot of important information we need to flush out. And so look at this. After taking Ruth as the wife, and she is the widow of Mahlon, and whenever you take the widow of Mahlon, at least in this context, he is expressly saying that he is to raise the name of the dead, Mahlon, meaning re-establish his name, his fame, so that people will know him again through his inheritance, right? Through his land, and through his son, right? Through his land, mostly through his land. And that the name of the dead, Mahlon, may not be cut off from among his brethren. Now, this word cut off, we have seen this before. And the word is karat. And the idea here is to disappear. That would be a better meaning to translate. May not disappear from among his brothers. What does that mean? When you talk about his brother, it would be his clan and his tribe, which tells us that Elimelech has a position at the gate. And so would his sons, because these would all be representatives of the leaders of the clan. But if Mahlon doesn't have any children, then he has no position. And so Boaz is willing to do that, to make sure that Mahlon remains remembered. So this is the place of his position at the gate. And this is a leadership seat. And this would be the children that comes along, right? The children that comes along. And you are witnesses. Remember, the idea of witnesses is to stand, to testify, so that nobody will see this as a secret transaction. This is a very public transaction. And this is the close of that chapter with Boaz and what he was supposed to do. And now I hope that we are clear from this text exactly what Boaz is trying to do. Verse 11. And all the people who were at the gate. Now remember, the gate is a very important place. This is a very important event that's taking place. It's about the elders. It is about the leaders of the city. And remember, the city are all Jews anyways, right? And that's Bethlehem or Bethlehem. And they are deciding what's happening to this family. And so all of them agree and says, we are witnesses. We will testify. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house. And who is that? And that would be Ruth. Right? That would be Ruth. And she's coming to your house like Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah are the two women in the lives of Jacob, right? In the lives of Jacob. And may she be as important as Rachel and Leah. Because between Rachel and Leah, and of course the two handmaids belonging to Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel. And so they are remembered, just as in Genesis chapter 3, that Chava, Eve, is the mother of all living. And whenever you talk about building the house of Israel, this is the idea of giving birth to the sons, right? Birth to the sons of Jacob, who is now the house of Israel, Jacob. And like Chava, she is the mother of all living. And Rachel and Leah, the two who are the foundation, who actually gave rise, right? They caused the house of Israel to be built up. And then they continue to bless. They say, may you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Bethlehem. Now again, an A and a B. May prosper in Ephrathah, be famous in Bethlehem. What do you mean may prosper? Well, may prosper comes from what? Chayil. Just like Ruth was Chayil, virtuous, when it refers to a man, it's obviously the strength of a man. Right? The strength of a man, his wealth. And well, I guess you could say that his valor. The idea is the same where it applies to the man and the woman. We read this earlier in chapter 3, where it was applied to Ruth. Now we see it applied to Ruth in the description. Let's say, the Lord make the woman like the two women in the lives of Jacob, and may you, and in this case, you as Boaz, continue to prosper in Ephrathah, which is Bethlehem, the other name for Bethlehem. The word be famous. What is be famous? That people will call, right? Call the name of Boaz. And that is the English terminology of be famous. The imagery is that the people will always talk about Boaz. And what would they talk about Boaz? That he is prosperous, he is strong, he is wealthy, he is powerful. He and Ruth laid the foundation, and so on and so forth. And we are seeing that as we go on down, you would see that this this blessing, may your house be like the house of Perez. Now, this is interesting. May your house be of the house like the house of Perez. Perez is in the same boat because Tamar, I guess we can remember Tamar in Genesis chapter 38, right? Tamar is Genesis chapter 38. And this is a very interesting story. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. And Tamar is from another family. And I would say that, how should we say? Tamar is the heroine, right? In chapter 38, that bore to Judah Perez, the son or the replacement son, called or the replacement of the firstborn of Judah, of which the lineage of Judah will perpetuate. And so now when we translate this in verse 12, he says that Judah and Tamar had Perez, which is a very unusual birth. And it says here, because the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman, because Tamar herself is not an Israelite. Right? Tamar is not an Israelite. And so we see Tamar and Ruth in a very similar light, right? In a very similar light. And it's quite interesting to see that people of Bethlehem actually knows the history of Genesis very, very well, right? Very, very well. And the impact, well, let's just touch on impact and then we'll finish. The offspring, which is Perez, was between Judah and Tamar. And Tamar wasn't an Israelite. And Perez became the continuation of the line of Judah. And now we have Boaz and Ruth, who is also not an Israelite. And with that, they would have the son who would continue the lineage of Boaz and whatever came before him. Now, this verse 12 is really showing a parallel with Judah and Tamar, Boaz and Ruth. And in so doing, they have no problems with this marriage at all, and they are blessing the couple in verses 11 and 12. And with this, we will continue tomorrow, the balance of it and reflection, and we will come to an end today.